Today we're going to explore a classic horror movie scenario with 7 chilling stories involving roadside hotels. Get ready to hear scary stories about isolated establishments, strange receptionists, and rooms that hold dark secrets. Let's find out what can happen when night falls and you need to stop at one of these remote places to rest while traveling. So sit back, make sure your bedroom door is securely locked, and let this spine-chilling journey begin. Oh, and before the hotel manager shows up, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This really helps the channel and make sure you don't miss any scary content like this. Let's go? The motel of the disappeared. The rain was punishing the asphalt of Highway 95 when the headlights of the Honda Civic illuminated the faded sign, Motel Pinheiro, vacancies, cable TV, air conditioning. Michael Reeves gripped the steering wheel tightly, the wipers barely able to clear the curtain of water that reduced visibility to a few meters. "We need to stop, Sarah," he said, looking at his wife who was checking the GPS without a signal. "This storm is only getting worse." Sarah Reeves nodded reluctantly. The Chicago couple were on the 3rd day of a road trip to San Francisco, where Michael was to present his research at a geology conference. The detour through the desert region of Nevada had been her idea, a chance to photograph landscapes for her travel blog. The reception was a cubicle with a musty cigarette smell. Behind the counter, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and thick glasses barely looked up from the ledger when they entered. $60 a night, payment in advance, breakfast from 6 to 8, he recited mechanically, sliding a registration card across the stained counter. The receptionist, whose badge identified him as Earl, shrugged when asked about the duration of the storm. "Hard to say. The roads might be impassable for a day or two when it rains like this." As Michael completed registration, Sarah noticed a wall covered in old photographs of guests. In many of them, Earl appeared alongside, smiling travelers. "You've been working here a long time," he commented. 32 years, Earl replied, an odd smile forming on his thin lips. "I know every inch of this place." His eyes roamed Sarah up and down for a second longer than was comfortable. Room 17, last one on the right, the quietest. Around midnight, Sarah woke up thirsty. Michael was sleeping soundly in the next bed. While drinking water in the bathroom, he heard a metallic sound coming from outside, like a key slowly turning in a lock. He pulled back the bathroom curtain a few inches and glimpsed through the fogged window a figure moving through the rain, carrying something heavy toward a shed at the back of the motel. When he woke up again, the digital clock read 5:47 a.m. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle. Michael's bed was empty and unmade. "Mike?" he called, checking the bathroom. No sign of him. His clothes were still there, as were his wallet and cell phone. Only the shoes were gone. At the reception, Earl stated that many guests left early to walk after the rain. Sarah waited for hours, increasingly distressed. Finally, he decided to look for it on his own. The air was damp and cold. He walked around the motel, calling for Michael, until he noticed footprints in the mud that led to the warehouse he had seen during the night. The door was ajar. The interior was dark and smelled of chemicals. When his eyes adapted to the dim light, he made out shelves covered with objects, watches, rings, wallets, glasses, dozens of them, meticulously organized. A noise behind her. Sarah turned and saw Earl standing in the doorway, blocking the light. "Always so curious," he said, his voice now different, deeper, more confident. "That's why I choose them." Sarah backed away, frantically looking for a way out. That was when he noticed in a corner a door that led to a descending staircase, and on the wall next door a board with photographs, not the same ones from the reception. In these, Earl appeared alone, holding personal objects. He recognized with horror Michael's glasses in one of the most recent photos. "What did you do to him?" he asked, his voice shaking. Earl smiled, closing the door behind him. "The same as I do with all the chosen ones. I add them to my collection." In a desperate move, Sarah grabbed a shovel leaning against the wall and hit him. The man fell, stunned, giving him time to run to the stairs. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors. In one of the rooms he found Michael tied up and unconscious, but alive. In others he discovered evidence of previous guests, some recent, others that appeared to have been there for years. He managed to drag Michael out and reach the car. As he sped down the muddy road, he saw Earl watching them leave with disturbing calm in the rearview mirror. Nye County Police found evidence at the Pinheiro Motel, linking Earl Simmons to 27 disappearances over 3 decades. The underground labyrinth, originally built as a fallout shelter in the 1960s, contained catalogued memorabilia of each victim and the remains of at least 11 people. The case of the missing people of Highway 95 led to the review of dozens of cold cases of people who went missing traveling through the Nevada desert. For investigators, most disturbing was the meticulousness of Earl's records. Every victim photographed, every possession labeled, every addition to the collection documented with clinical precision. And for travelers plying Nevada's desert roads, the warning remains. Not all storms are the biggest threat on a road trip, and not all shelters offer true safety from the darkness outside. Guarded rooms. The Scottish rain was falling relentlessly when Emma Lawson finally spotted the lights of the Heather Glen Motel. After 12 hours driving from London, his eyes burned with exhaustion. The work trip had been extended, and the booking in Glasgow was cancelled due to the delay. The small roadside motel wasn't in the plans, but the storm left him no choice. The reception was a cramped space with old-fashioned decor, worn carpeting, flowery wallpaper, and a dark wooden counter. The receptionist, a man of about 50, who introduced himself as Douglas McGregor, owner, was examining his passport with excessive interest. "Traveling alone, Miss Lawson? Business or pleasure?" "Business," Emma replied dryly, uncomfortable with the man's insistent gaze. "Just one night. Of course, of course. I have the perfect room for a special guest." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Room 8, at the end of the corridor, the most private." The room was surprisingly clean considering the outside appearance of the motel. Double bed, old television, basic bathroom. Emma locked the door, placed her chair against the doorknob, a habit acquired from years of traveling for work, and took a hot shower. While drying her hair, she noticed something strange on the wall opposite the bathroom. Small, almost imperceptible holes forming a circular pattern. He approached, examining it curiously. It looked recent, as if someone had deliberately punched holes in the wallpaper. Checking the room more closely, he found similar sets of holes. Near the bed, in the bathroom ceiling above the desk. His instinct as an investigative journalist awakened immediately. With a pen, he carefully enlarged one of the holes. Inserting his cell phone's flashlight, he glimpsed what appeared to be a small camera in the space between the walls. A chill ran down his spine, checked his cell phone. No signal. The motel's Wi-Fi, surprisingly powerful for such a remote establishment, was the only connection available. When connecting, your laptop automatically detected a file-sharing network, probably due to incorrect configuration. The file names were unsettling. Quarto 8 ao vivo, Quarto 3 banho, archivo melhores momentos. Emma felt nauseous as she understood. Every room was being filmed and broadcast. But where? For whom? Pretending to be normal, he made the bed as if he were going to sleep, placing pillows to simulate a body. He turned off the lights, leaving only the weakest lamp on, and positioned himself next to the door, watching. 30 minutes later, he heard footsteps in the hallway. A key turned silently in the lock. The chair prevented it from opening completely. A male voice mumbled something, followed by a whispered, "Try later." When the footsteps moved away, Emma acted quickly. Using techniques learned in investigative reporting, he improvised tools from items in his suitcase. He located and disconnected 2 mini cameras in the bedroom and 1 in the bathroom. Each device was connected to a small wireless transmitter. Determined to gather evidence, she reconnected a camera and used her laptop to track the signal. He discovered that the transmissions went to a server in the motel itself, probably in McGregor's office, and from there to a password-protected website. Taking a risk, Emma silently left the room. The hallway was deserted. Following the partially exposed network cables on the ceiling, he arrived at a door marked "Private" near reception. Through the crack in the door, he glimpsed an office transformed into an operations center. Multiple monitors displayed different rooms, some occupied by unsuspecting guests. McGregor sat with his back turned, typing on a keyboard. On the main screen, a chat interface displayed disturbing messages. "Premium guest, 347. How much for special access? To room 8 today. Admin, 500. Female guest alone. Physical access after midnight, 15 minutes. Emma photographed everything with her cell phone. As he stepped back, a board creaked beneath his feet. McGregor turned sharply. The return to the room was a desperate race. He locked himself in again, piling the dresser against the door. His initial plan to flee immediately was thwarted. Through the window, he saw 2 men patrolling the parking lot, one of them holding what appeared to be a gun. Using the motel's Wi-Fi and a security app, Emma was able to send the evidence to her publisher in London with an urgent message. Minutes later, her cell phone briefly picked up enough signal to get a response. "Police on the way. 45 minutes. Stay safe." The next 45 minutes were the longest of his life. Repeated attempts to open your door, male voices arguing in the hallway, promises that nothing would happen if she just opened it, veiled threats when he refused. When blue lights finally illuminated the parking lot, McGregor made one last attempt. "You don't understand what you did. They'll kill me if they get arrested." The police operation revealed the true horror of the Heather Glen Motel. 23 rooms, all equipped with surveillance systems. A server containing more than 4 years of recordings. A list of clients, including prominent names who paid to attend and, for an additional fee, visit selected guests. More disturbing, evidence that some guests who resisted the visits never left the motel. Excavations on the property revealed human remains in the adjacent woods. The motel voyeur case, as it became known in the British press, resulted in the arrest of McGregor and 12 premium clients identified. Subsequent investigations linked the operation to an international exploitation network that utilized isolated motels in at least 4 countries. The final stop-dense fog covered the E60 road when Mircea Antonescu parked his truck in the family-friendly courtyard of the Hotel Horizon. After 15 years of transporting goods across Eastern Europe, the 47-year-old Romanian knew every stop along the route. The Horizon, located just 3 miles from the Hungarian border, was his favorite stop 8 years ago. Decent food, hot showers and reasonable prices. "The usual, Mircea?" asked Soren, the night clerk, a thin man in his 60s who looked like he'd been working there forever. "Yes, room 14, if available," Mircea replied, signing the register. Room 14 was at the end of the corridor, away from the highway noise. "Unfortunately, it is occupied. I can offer 22 on the 2nd floor." Mircea accepted with a shrug. As he walked up the stairs, he noticed a man in a dark suit talking to Victor, the manager, near the back door. It wasn't the first time I'd seen men in suits there. Strange for a hotel for truck drivers and budget travelers. The hotel had changed subtly in recent months. New employees, additional security cameras, and an entire section of the 2nd floor often blocked off for renovations. Small changes that Mircea, with his eye trained for details after thousands of kilometers on the roads, did not miss. During dinner in the attached restaurant, he observed 3 young women entering accompanied by an older man. They seemed nervous, speaking what sounded like Russian or Ukrainian. The man handed passports to Victor, who directed them to the wing under renovation. "New chambermaids?" Mircea asked casually to Irina, the waitress who had been serving him for years. Irina looked away. "Special guests," he replied in a low voice. "Best not to ask questions." That night, unable to sleep, Mircea went out to smoke in the parking lot. He saw an unmarked van park out back. 3 men unloaded large boxes, not unusual for a hotel. The strange thing was the time, 2:37 a.m. The next morning, the 3 young women were not at breakfast, nor were they seen leaving. Their rooms were already being cleaned for new guests. Over the next 3 months, Mircea began documenting patterns. Certain types of travelers, mostly young Eastern European women, but occasionally Asian men, were always directed to specific rooms, 15 to 20 on the first floor, 31 to 36 on the second. They were rarely seen again after checking in. Unmarked vans arrived regularly during the early hours of the morning, always in the days following the arrival of these special guests. And Victor, once just a manager, now displayed signs of inexplicable wealth. A new Audi, expensive watches, tailored suits. Confirmation came when Mircea, pretending to be drunk, stumbled into the wrong hallway and saw 2 security guards escorting a tearful young woman to the van parked in the back. She carried no luggage, and her look was one of pure terror. Days later, on his regular stop, Mircea was surprised to be directed to room 17 in the special guests wing. There was a leak on 22, Sorin explained without meeting his eyes. 17 is our best room right now. The room was different from the others, more luxurious, with a king-size bed and a stocked minibar, but the disturbing details were obvious to the discerning eye. Reinforced locks on the outside, barred windows disguised by heavy curtains, no telephone. Examining more closely, Mircea found desperate scratches on the inside of the door and under. The bed, a small pendant with a photo on it, a young girl smiling next to an elderly woman. On the back, in Cyrillic, were what appeared to be names and a date. That night, he pretended to go out to dinner, but hid in the parking lot. At around 11 p.m., he saw Victor leading 2 men in suits to room 19. They left an hour later, and Victor took notes on a tablet. Using his connections with other truck drivers, Mircea began gathering information. The hotel horizon was not unique. Similar establishments existed along the main transport routes in Eastern Europe. All served as processing points for a sophisticated human trafficking network. Taking a risk, Mircea discreetly installed a camera in the parking lot, capturing images of the vans, license plates and faces. For 3 weeks, he collected evidence, sending it through a police officer friend in Bucharest. In the 4th week, Victor approached him at the restaurant. "You have been a loyal customer for many years, Mircea," he said, sitting down at his table. "But lately he's been asking too many questions, watching too much." "Just curious about the renovations," Mircea replied, remaining calm. "It never seems to end." "Some businesses are ongoing in nature," smiled Victor. "I have a proposal. Your trucks cross borders regularly without much inspection. We could have a mutually beneficial arrangement." The offer was clear. Become part of the operation, transporting special packages across borders. The pay would be generous. "I'll think about it," replied Mircea, knowing that his answer would determine whether he would get out of there alive. That night, while he pretended to consider the proposal, he sent off the final pieces of evidence. The next morning, as he left for his scheduled delivery, he noticed unusual activity, unmarked cars in the parking lot, men surreptitiously watching the entrances. When he returned 3 days later, the Hotel Horizon was surrounded by police. Vehicles. A joint Interpol operation with Romanian and Hungarian authorities had dismantled what turned out to be one of the largest human trafficking transit points in Eastern Europe. Victor and 12 associates were arrested. 27 victims were rescued from the underground facilities discovered during the operation, people destined for forced labor in Western Europe or sexual exploitation. What's up, guys? The roadside hotel stories are chilling even now, aren't they? If you're enjoying these scary stories, take the opportunity to take a quick break, subscribe to the channel, and leave your like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to continue bringing you more chilling content. Now, shall we go back to the next stories? There's still a lot of fear ahead. 4. Room service. James Chen checked his watch as the elevator ascended to the 12th floor of the Grand Pacific Hotel. 3 weeks in Taipei to finalize the acquisition of a semiconductor company had turned into 5, and the luxury hotel, initially a welcomed comfort, was beginning to feel like a gilded prison. He inserted the keycard into room 1214, immediately noticing the characteristic smell of cleaning products. The maid had stopped by, always punctually at 10 a.m. while he was in meetings. The bed was impeccably made, new towels neatly folded, and a bottle of mineral water on the bedside table with a handwritten card for a good night's sleep, courtesy of room service. It was the 4th day in a row that I found the water bottle, a personalized touch that you would appreciate, if not for one disturbing detail. James never drank water before bed, preferring green tea that he prepared in the room's electric kettle. He had left the previous bottles untouched. As she unpacked her suitcase, she noticed another strange detail. Her medicine bag seemed slightly rearranged. The bottles of vitamins and antacids were in the same order, but subtly misaligned, as if someone had examined them. That evening, during dinner in the hotel restaurant, James observed a woman of approximately 50 being rushed out of the ballroom in a wheelchair, apparently suffering from some sudden illness. He vaguely recognized her, an Australian executive staying on the same floor, whom he occasionally greeted in the elevator. The next morning, as he passed by reception, he heard 2 employees talking in Mandarin, not realizing that James, an American of Taiwanese descent, understood perfectly. Second case this month. First that German, now the Australian, both with similar symptoms. The professional curiosity of James, director of corporate security at his company, was awakened. During lunch, he searched for local news on his tablet. Nothing about incidents at the hotel, but he found a small note about a German businessman who had died due to unspecified medical complications during his stay in Taipei 3 weeks earlier. When he returned to his room that afternoon, he decided to test a theory. He left his laptop open with the sleep screen activated, the camera strategically placed to capture the area near the bedside table. He went out to dinner and, upon returning, checked the recording. The chambermaid, a serious-looking, middle-aged woman whom James occasionally encountered in the corridors, had come in for night duty. After carrying out the usual tasks, he approached the bottle of water that James had purposely left half empty. With precise movements, he removed a small bottle from his uniform pocket and added a few drops to the liquid, shaking gently to mix. James felt a chill. He copied the video to an external drive and, using latex gloves from the emergency kit he always carried on trips, he carefully sealed the bottle in a plastic bag. The next morning, instead of immediately contacting the police, he decided to gather more information. Using his corporate contacts, he got the maid's name from a friendly front desk employee, Lin Mei Hua, who had been working at the hotel for 12 years and had consistently received excellent reviews. Further research revealed something surprising. Before working at the hotel, Lin had been a laboratory assistant at a local university, specifically in the toxicology department. He had left his job following accusations of misconduct that were never formally brought forward. That night, James pretended to go out to dinner, but returned silently through a servant's staircase. He positioned himself discreetly in the hallway, watching Lynn make his rounds. He noticed a pattern. She spent more time in rooms occupied by long-stay guests, especially those traveling alone. Taking a risk, he followed her to the employee locker room in the basement. When she left, James used a card decoding device, a tool from his corporate security work, to access her locker. What he found confirmed his suspicions. A meticulously kept notebook with guests' names, dates, substances administered, and reactions observed. Some names were marked with red crosses. Others had notes such as 48 hours until first symptoms, indistinguishable from heart failure, or not detectable on standard tests. James photographed everything and left quickly. In the elevator, he found Lynn returning to his floor. There, eyes met briefly, hers professional and distant, his trying to hide the horror of what he had discovered. "Do you need something to sleep on tonight, Mr. Chen?" she asked politely. "Many guests have difficulty resting on long trips." "I'm fine, thanks," James replied, keeping his voice steady. "Actually, I'm going out to dinner with colleagues. I won't be back until late." James went directly to the Taipei police, where his fluent Mandarin and corporate credentials ensured immediate attention. The investigation was quick and discreet. The hotel could not risk a public scandal. Lynn was detained while preparing. The night service. In his apartment, police found a makeshift laboratory and diaries detailing 5 years of experiments on hotel guests. His notes revealed a methodical and disturbed mind, obsessed with finding the perfect poison, lethal, undetectable, and simulating natural causes. The autopsy of the Australian executive who had died in hospital and the exhumation of the German businessman confirmed poisoning by rare substances. Subsequent investigations connected Lynn to at least 7 deaths at 3 different hotels where he had worked, all initially attributed to natural causes. The case of the Taipei chambermaid, as it became known in international hotel security circles, led to changes in protocols for hiring and supervising employees with access to rooms. And for business travelers around the world, be warned, not all room service is provided with the best intentions, and sometimes the real danger isn't in what you see, but in what's added when you're not looking. The last accommodation, the Miller family had meticulously planned their European vacation for 2 years. After visiting Prague and Vienna, they decided to explore the Tatra Mountains on the border between Slovakia and Poland. Hotel Carpathia wasn't in the original plans, but when his rental car ran into trouble on the mountainous road and night approached, the sign saying Hotel 3 Kilometer seemed like a blessing. The establishment was an imposing building of wood and stone, alpine style, surrounded by dense pine forests. Robert Miller, a 42-year-old university professor, his wife Diana, a 39-year-old doctor, and their teenage children Ethan and Lily were impressed by the rustic yet elegant architecture. "Welcome to Hotel Carpathia," greeted the receptionist, a thin man who introduced himself as Gregor. "We rarely welcome Americans this time of year." Something about Gregor's tone, as he examined the passports, made Diana slightly uncomfortable. The hotel seemed almost empty, with only a few luxury cars in the parking lot. "We are short on guests," explained Gregor. "Only our regular customers on the upper floor. You will have plenty of privacy on the first floor." While dining in the partially empty restaurant, they noticed a group of well-dressed men in a private room, chatting animatedly in several European languages. "Executives on corporate retreat," commented the waiter when Robert asked casually. "They come every summer." Around 11 p.m., with her children already asleep, Diana noticed unusual movement in the hallway. Through the crack in the door, he saw Gregor and 2 employees systematically checking each emergency exit. They would test the doors and then insert. something into the locks. Robert tried to go out into the hallway, only to discover that the bedroom door wouldn't open all the way. Something was blocking it from opening completely from the outside. He managed to peer through the crack and saw a thin steel cable passing through all the door handles in the hallway, effectively locking all occupied rooms simultaneously. The cell phone had no signal, and the room phone was dead. Through the window, they saw that they were at least 6 meters above the ground, a risky descent, especially with teenagers. At 5:30 a.m., they were woken up by an announcement on the room's sound system, something they hadn't even noticed existed. "Good morning, Miller family," said a male voice with a slight Slavic accent. "We hope you have rested well. In 1 hour, you will be released from your room. You will have exactly 30 minutes to leave the hotel by any means possible. If you manage to do so, you will be free to leave. Otherwise, the game will begin." "What game?" shouted Robert into the speaker. "A tradition for our special guests," the voice continued. "Twice a year, we select visitors for a hunt in the forests surrounding the hotel. Participants pay handsomely for the privilege. You are this summer's guests of honor." The next hour was spent in desperate attempts to escape. At exactly 6:30, they heard the security cable being removed. The door unlocked automatically. The hotel was eerily silent as they ran through the hallways. All exits on the first floor were locked or blocked. The staircase to the second floor was guarded by 2 burly men. 17 minutes left, the voice announced over the PA system. In the main lobby, they found Gregor watching a stopwatch. "I suggest you try the kitchen," he said casually. "There is always a service outlet." The tip seemed suspicious, but they followed through on the suggestion. The service door was unlocked, leading to an inner courtyard. "It's a trap," Diana realized. Through the kitchen window, they saw men strategically positioned in the forest, some with what appeared to be rifles with telescopic sights. It was Ethan who noticed the only real possibility. A garbage chute, big enough for one person, leading underground. One by one, they slipped through the dark duct, landing in a waste processing room. From there, they found a maintenance corridor that led to an unattended emergency door, clearly forgotten by the organizers. The door opened onto a steep slope behind the hotel. Without looking back, they ran through the forest until they reached the main road, where a Slovak truck driver stopped to help them. The Poprad police were initially skeptical, but the family's insistence ensured an investigation. When authorities arrived at the Hotel Carpathia hours later, they found only regular staff and confused guests. Gregor had disappeared, as had the mysterious customers upstairs. A wider investigation, eventually involving Interpol, revealed a disturbing scheme. The Carpathia Club, an exclusive group of millionaires who organized manhunts twice a year in remote locations in Eastern Europe. The victims were carefully selected, usually foreign tourists whose disappearance would not generate immediate investigations in the region. The Miller family case, which became known as the Carpathia Hunt, led to the arrest of 3 hotel employees and the identification of 2 organizers. However, most of the hunters were never identified, protected by layers of anonymity and influence. For the Millers, their European vacation turned into a nightmare that left permanent scars. And for tourists in remote regions, be warned, not all hotels only offer accommodation. Some offer their guests as prey in a deadly game where checking out was never an option. Old records, the Scottish rain fell incessantly as Moira Campbell began her first night shift at the Blackwood Inn. At 24, having recently graduated in hotel management, she considered herself lucky to get a job at such a historic establishment, even if it was just as a night receptionist. The Blackwood, a Victorian mansion converted into a boutique hotel on the outskirts of Edinburgh, maintained its original atmosphere with narrow corridors, creaky staircases, and period decor. The owner, Dr. Malcolm Sinclair, was a man in his 60s, always impeccably dressed, who divided his time between the hotel and his private medical research clinic. "Night shifts are quiet," explained Margaret, the senior receptionist, during the training. "Just keep your records up to date and call Dr. Sinclair if there are any emergencies. He lives in the annex and is always available for guests who are unwell." On the third night, during a particularly bad storm that knocked out the power for a few minutes, Moira accidentally knocked over a stack of documents behind the reception desk. As he collected them, he noticed that one of the wooden panels on the wall had moved slightly, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, he found a leather-bound ledger, yellowed with age. The oldest entries dated back to 1997, when Blackwood was still a small inn. Curious, she began leafing through it during the quiet hours of the morning. What caught his attention was a strange pattern of notes. Next to certain names, there were small symbols, circles, triangles, or squares, followed by cryptic notes such as "positive response to compound 37" or "heart failure after 4 hours, adjust dosage." Even more disturbing, many of these guests had death noted in red, with causes such as respiratory failure, cardiac arrest, or simply adverse reaction. Comparing it to the current record, Moira noticed that rooms 7, 12, and 15 had a disproportionate number of these incidents. Coincidentally, they were the most isolated rooms in the hotel, located in different wings. Over the next week, Moira began paying special attention to the guests assigned to these rooms. He noticed a pattern. These were usually people traveling alone, often elderly people or individuals with pre-existing medical conditions who they casually mentioned during check-in. The decisive incident occurred when an elderly woman in room 12 called reception during Moira's shift, complaining of sudden dizziness. Following protocol, Moira called Dr. Sinclair, who arrived quickly with his medical bag. "I'll take care of it, Moira. Continue with your tasks," he instructed, closing the bedroom door tightly. Restless, Moira decided to check on her guest later. When he knocked on the door of room 12 at around 3 a.m., he got no response. Using the master key, he entered silently. The lady was sleeping soundly, abnormally soundly. On the bedside table, Moira noticed a half-empty glass of water, and next to it, almost imperceptibly, a small empty bottle. Most alarming, a thin plastic tube attached to the woman's arm, attached to a compact device that appeared to monitor and collect something. Frightened, Moira discreetly photographed the scene with her cell phone before leaving. The next morning, the lady was found dead. Natural causes, according to Dr. Sinclair, who signed the death certificate himself. Determined to uncover the truth, Moira began investigating Dr. Sinclair's past. It turned out that before purchasing the hotel in 1997, he had been a researcher at a pharmaceutical company, fired after accusations of unethical conduct in clinical trials. Accusations that never resulted in formal prosecution. Using her free time, Moira examined public death records in the region. Over the past 27 years, more than 40 guests had died at the Blackwood Inn, an unusually high number even for a hotel that frequently catered to elderly people. Access to the annex, where Dr. Sinclair lived, came by chance when he asked her to deliver urgent documents in his absence. In the meticulously organized office, Moira found detailed files on test subjects, each corresponding to a deceased guest. The documents revealed a systematic program of unauthorized testing of experimental compounds, secretly administered to selected guests. Most disturbing, a scientific diary where Sinclair documented his advances in experimental treatments for neurodegenerative diseases, using guests as unwitting guinea pigs to test compounds rejected by medical ethics committees. Trembling, Moira copied as many documents as she could and hurriedly left. That night, he sent the evidence anonymously to the police and a local newspaper. 2 days later, before authorities took action, Dr. Sinclair approached her during her shift. "You were in my office," he said calmly, his cold eyes fixed on her, and he saw things he shouldn't have. "I don't know what you're talking about," Moira replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "You know, many of my treatments are very promising," he continued, as if discussing the weather. "Some subjects showed significant improvements before the inevitable side effects, the sacrifice of a few for the greater good." That same night, Moira felt dizzy after drinking the tea that Dr. Sinclair had kindly prepared for her. Realizing the danger, he managed to pull the fire alarm before losing consciousness. The subsequent investigation revealed the full horror. For nearly 3 decades, Dr. Malcolm Sinclair had turned the Blackwood Inn into his personal laboratory, testing experimental compounds on carefully selected guests. Its annex contained a small laboratory where it modified medications and analyzed samples collected from victims. The guest, from 237 Frank Reeves, watched the desert landscape from the window of the Desert Palms Motel, where he had worked as night manager for almost a year. At age 63, after 3 decades as a homicide detective in Chicago, retirement in Arizona seemed like the perfect choice. Dry weather for his weary bones and a quiet job to keep his mind occupied. Desert Palms, with its 40 rooms arranged in a U-shape around a rarely used pool, catered mainly to travelers from historic Route 66, tourists, truckers, and the occasional person looking to disappear for a while. Among the regular guests was Walter Gaines, a man of approximately 50 who occupied room 237 for a week every 2 months, always paying in cash. He said he was a commercial representative of medical products, although he never specified which company he worked for. "Good evening, Mr. Gaines," greeted Frank as the man entered the reception on that warm August night. 237 is ready as always." Gaines smiled politely, his blue eyes never meeting Frank's. "Thank you. I'll be here for 10 days this time. I have clients to visit all over the region." As he watched Gaines walk to his room, carrying only a medium-sized suitcase and a cardboard box, something in the man's posture awakened a distant memory in Frank. That familiar feeling he had developed from years of investigating criminals. That night, leafing through a book about unsolved cases he kept from his detective days, Frank stopped at a chapter about the interstate killer, a serial killer who had never been caught. Between 1995 and 2010, at least 17 women had disappeared. Along highways in the American Southwest, the few bodies found showed the same pattern: restraint marks on the wrists and ankles and a small surgical incision at the base of the skull. The only suspect, identified by a surviving witness in 2003, was described as a white male between 30–40 years old, possibly with medical knowledge. A sketch accompanied the text. Frank felt a shiver when he realized his resemblance to Walter Gaines, older now, gray hair instead of brown, but the same cold eyes and restrained smile. Over the next few days, Frank discreetly observed Gaines's movements. The man left early in his impeccably clean black sedan, always returning after dark. Twice, Frank noticed dark stains in the trunk when Gaines opened it to store something. On the 3rd night, a young woman stayed in room 235, next to Gaines. She was traveling alone, her car with Colorado license plates having mechanical problems. Frank noticed how Gaines watched her from his bedroom window, a calculated interest in his eyes. The opportunity to investigate came when Gaines left the next morning. As manager, Frank had access to all rooms. Normally, I would never violate a guest's privacy, but decades of police instinct screamed that something was wrong. Room 237 was impeccably organized. Bed made with military precision, clothes folded neatly on the dresser, In the bathroom, an unusually complete first aid kit, including surgical scalpels and powerful sedatives. Under the bed, a toolbox containing ropes, duct tape, and latex gloves. The real horror was hidden in the lining of the suitcase, a leather-bound diary containing meticulous entries dating from 1995 to the present. Each entry included a name, location, date, and disturbing details about procedures performed. Small strands of hair were stuck to some pages. The most recent entry, from just 3 days ago, described a woman found at a gas station near Flagstaff. Frank photographed everything with his cell phone, hands shaking. As he replaced the diary, he noticed something that had gone unnoticed. A small vial containing a clear liquid labeled only C7 and a disposable syringe. Leaving the room quickly, Frank called his old partner, now a captain in the Arizona State Police. The answer was clear. Don't touch anything. We're sending a team. Keep an eye on him, but don't come any closer. If he's who we think he is, he's extremely dangerous. When Gaines returned at dusk, Frank observed him talking to the young woman in room 235 in the pool area. He offered her a drink, which she accepted with a smile. Frank noticed how Gaines positioned his body to block her view as he added something to her glass. Unable to wait for the police, Frank pulled the fire alarm. In the confusion that ensued, he managed to push the young woman away, claiming there was an emergency at reception. Gaines immediately realized what was happening. When the first squad cars appeared in the parking lot, he tried to escape through the back, only to find Frank blocking his way, wielding his old service weapon that he kept in storage. "It's over, Walter. Or whatever your real name is," Frank said. Gaines' smile turned into something cold and calculating. "You have no idea what you're interrupting," he replied. "My work is important. I am studying human consciousness at the moment of death. Someday, I will be recognized as a pioneer." The subsequent investigation confirmed the worst. The man's real name was Dr. Paul Whitaker, a former neurosurgeon whose license had been revoked in 1994 for unethical conduct. The diary documented 31 victims over 3 decades, all part of his private study of death. His method was always the same: selecting lone travelers, sedating his victims, and performing experimental neurological procedures while documenting their reactions. And so, we come to the end of our 7 horror stories, involving roadside hotels. So which one scared you the most? Will any make you think twice before stopping at an unfamiliar hotel while traveling? Tell us in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the scary world of isolated hotels, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and encourages me to bring you more chilling stories. And if you are not yet registered, take the opportunity now to sign up and activate the bell.